in simplest terms, talk about, people are like, I'm going to be authentic. And then they start like thinking about it. Like there's a process, the 7
Right.
steps to being authentic. And, it's this balance between like how to do something and make it versus like you're inhabiting it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Could you distinguish that a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny because I wrote my second book, which is now came out 16 years ago, was on authenticity. And that's when I really started to study it. And I have seen an evolution over the last, decade and a half or so with how we think about it and talk about it. And to your point, we use it a lot. So the word gets thrown around. And then there's this idea of, well, how do I be more authentic? And it's kind of like authenticity is the way, right? It's that saying, there is no peace, like destination peace is the way. There is no authenticity destination. So it's an embodiment of it. But the way that I define it is that authenticity, the foundation of authenticity is honesty. But in order to really operate with authenticity, we have to remove something from our honesty and we have to add something to it. The thing we have to remove is our self-righteousness. And the thing we have to add is vulnerability. So I call this the authenticity equation. It's honesty minus self-righteousness plus vulnerability. And as we start to get into that, then there's a little more nuance. There's a little more paradox. There is some deepening that we have to do when we really think about what authenticity means. But again, showing up authentically isn't this binary thing that like, I'm either brutally honest and I say everything that's on my mind, or I,
Right.
sort of sugarcoat it and dance around it and walk on eggshells.
And again, the word simplicity, but they're big rocks. These are big
Yeah.
ideas. They sound in their big rock form, in their brute form, so simple, but there is a lot of subtlety and distinction to it.
Yeah.
And if the pathway is not the destination and being authentic or authenticity is a way to access this teamwork, this communication, connecting as a leader, when we're not being authentic, what's going on?
I mean, usually we're scared. Most of the time it's not like, I mean, again, I often when I'm speaking, I'll ask, how many of you consider yourselves liars? And of course, people laugh and every now and again someone will raise their hand. But for the most part, we don't think of ourselves as liars. But then I'll say, how many of you from time to time massage the truth a little bit? And then, of course, everybody's like, well, yeah, that's life, that's sales, that's business, that's leadership. It's like, okay,
Right.
so now we're talking about degrees. So it's not like we wake up in the morning and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lie, I'm going to deceive, I'm going to make
Right.
stuff up. But it's these subtle ways. And it's usually less even about massaging the truth. It's more about withholding what we really think. It's not
Yeah.
asking the question. It's not going, I don't think that's a good idea, or I don't understand that, or I'm uncomfortable with that. It's the texting under the table during the meeting or sending the private message on Zoom when someone's talking about this is ridiculous or what are they talking? It's those kinds of things. That's kind of what's usually happening. And again, it's most often not malicious. It's more just fear-based.
And do you think it's also, within that fear, people, their response or reaction, I think might be the better word, is that they start faking it?
Yeah. And look, I mean, one of the many paradoxes is like the notion of fake it till you make it is an important one. The notion of like dealing with our imposter syndrome. So you get promoted and now you're in this new role and it's like, oh, geez, I don't feel totally prepared for this, which is everybody's experience, by the way, when they take a leap in anything. So there is some value in leaning into that fear and sort of faking it till you make it and you start to figure it out as you go. At the same time, though, if we're faking it in a way where we're either not telling the truth to ourselves or we're trying to pretend like it's not there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so
Right.
it's subtle, but I think
Right.
there's a way for us to kind of just lean into that. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that we have to tell everybody everything about some of the fear or insecurity that we have, but it's about being honest with ourselves and ideally being honest with some people around us who we can lean on.
They say leaders admit when they don't know or recognize or are open about that. And that's fine. But then what do you do with that? And,
Right.
I don't know. Do you have any ideas? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know. Where do you think we could find out?
Yeah.
I mean, there's deeper levels here, but I want to, first of all, for our viewers, this is some really rich, great stuff. And I know our audience loves all this kind of conversation about getting to the heart of the matter of what it is to be your true self,